Hi everyone. Today we are looking at the differences between the Gen 1 model of our TiTAN cable slide and the Gen 2 model. So you might not know that this is on the market and available, but it is. It's on the website now, and it is a significant improvement in several areas over the Gen 1 model. So I'm going to illustrate for you what those things are. I'll show you some of the differences, and I want to talk about the mentality behind it. That's really important to me, that people understand that every new product that comes along is driven by innovations, by trying to address flaws that may exist, even if albeit those flaws are minor. There's still things I'm constantly evaluating with products, and I will not rest until I can get it to the best state that I believe is possible, which may never even be reached. So we do have this Gen 2 model. I'm not pushing a product out there that is unnecessary. I am not trying to say you must upgrade. In fact, if you have a Gen 1 model and it's working well for you, I am delighted about that. And I would say keep using what you have. There are some areas where we'll see boosts in speed, for example, with the Gen 2 versus the Gen 1. There's some other changes that I'll talk about here that may appeal to you. In that case, sure, consider the Gen 2, but I'm not saying that this is a necessary item for everyone. It's just something that's available. If you want to take a look, it does offer these things. So the Gen 1 model has done extremely well out there. A lot of people have it, but there were a few things that were identified along the way. Changes have been made even within the Gen 1. So there's almost really several revisions within the Gen 1 model even to get to where it is now. And I'll talk about that, and I'll talk here about the Gen 2. So one of the biggest things with the Gen 1 model is that, in terms of potential issues, is that the rollers originally, the large rollers on these models, which are the same at this point, by the way. So the Gen 1 has exactly the same large roller and bearing system that the Gen 2 has. That was not always the case. We started out with different type on Gen 1. So the large rollers originally themselves, the material, which is similar to a Delrin type of material, that was not strong enough early on, the design of the roller. So there were a few instances where people were cracking the rollers. It was pretty isolated, to be honest. And most people out there have never seen anything suggesting that they would have that problem. But nonetheless, people did. And I can't accept that. So we designed a stronger version of the roller. The first step was to make the one side a little thicker, and that's what we have now. So you can see here that one side of these rollers is a little thicker than the other side. That was the first step. And then the next step, which again brings us to where we are now on the design of the big roller, is that we increased the actual internal thickness of the material. To be able to do that without increasing the outer diameter of the roller, we had to make a smaller inner diameter hole and go with a smaller bearing set to put inside there. So along with changing the bearings to smaller, they're more precise. They're a higher level of tolerance, so they roll smoother than previous generations. So if you have an earlier model, Gen 1, that doesn't have this smaller internal hole, that means you have the older type of bearing set. So there's that change. Again, the current Gen 1 and Gen 2 has that. But what sets the two models, the Gen 1 and the Gen 2, apart really are key things. Now let's look at what they are. So the Gen 1, as you can see right here, is designed, it's retained, the small rollers are retained with pins, and these pins are pressed into place. So trying to get it to resolve, can't really get good resolution, but I think that's probably good enough. You can see the pins protrude a little bit above the edge of the frame here, and then on the other side of the frame they actually don't go all the way to the edge of it. And that's because the frame is so tight, the holes are so tight that those stainless steel pins can't be pressed all the way down, and they don't need to be. Once they're pressed into that frame like this, they are 100% permanent. Those pins cannot come out, not without cracking the frame. I've tried. So that's the case with how the small rollers are retained. Now, why are we changing that? That sounds like a good system, right? Sounds very secure. It is secure, but it can lead to one major issue. When the pins are being pressed into place, they can start to bend slightly. As they go in and as they go down to the other hole, you can end up with a pin that is not really entirely straight all the way down, which then gives you a small roller that's slightly askew from being square. Doesn't really sound like maybe a big issue, but what it can result in is then the frame sitting a little bit canted, either up or down. So when it's canted a little bit, then you can potentially get cable rod contact with the frame itself. And you will often see this with the Gen 1, not that you can ever really detect it while you're drawing, or you can't hear it, you can't feel it, but you can look down at the rod in some cases and notice the lightest little bits of marring. So that means at some point, the frame is barely grazing it, apparently. Not enough to cause actual gouges in the material, not enough to strip anything off of there, other than the anodizing finish. So this eliminates that. We've eliminated, the Gen 2 eliminates that issue by going away from pins, so we no longer have any pins on Gen 2. What we have instead are machine screws. So we've designed titanium alloy machine screws to use in the frame. Now, precision is of the utmost quality here and grade. Also, you drive the screw through into, of course, a female threaded portion in the bottom. There's no way then that you're going to have a non-straight connection. You have the really excellent connection all the way down. Also, the body of the screw was designed to essentially be an axle. So it's of course not threaded, the portion where the small roller is contacted. So it's acting as an axle. It's larger in diameter than the pins, and it's polished, surface polished titanium. So these small rollers roll across those axles with the greatest ease and really low friction. So you combine that with a couple other things that we'll get into here, and now you're starting to see where a product like this can be improved and where we did improve it. So it's one of these things. It's like a lot of our products. They're all about nuance. They're all about making these slight improvements that ultimately can result in fairly substantial and big changes to how the bow shoots. So let me grab, I have behind here, I had it on here, they're in my hand now, 2 frames. Now these don't have the large rollers on them, so we can see the differences in the frame itself, because here's another area where we made changes. So here we have Gen 2, here's Gen 1, and it's pretty apparent that there's some key differences right off the bat. You can see the Gen 1 model is slimmed down through here. It's a straight profile cut. Here we have an angled upward frame. It's a beefier frame. So we've cut out material through here, and see how there's a really deep V there? There's a deep V cut on both sides of the frame versus what is more of a U shape on the Gen 1 model. Yeah, we're actually getting some good resolution now. So you can see that U shape. Some more material was cut out there. So the amount of material taken out is not as big as it might look in terms of actual mass. So we're shaving about 5/100ths of an ounce off of the total weight of the finished product, which puts the Gen 2 model, surprisingly, about 4/100ths or so above where the factory slide is. So that should be slower, right? If you think if it's all about mass, then it should be slower. But it's not all about mass. It's about that combined with the reduction in friction and rolling resistance that this product has compared to the factory model. And we get that with the combination of the 4 rollers made from the Delrin type material. We get that from the reduced mass. So the Gen 1 model would more or less just typically mimic the speed of the factory slides. Now this is the PSE factory slide I'm talking about. And in some cases would be a little above. This model, Gen 2, is actually 2 to 3 feet per second faster than Gen 1. Now that can vary from bow to bow. You might see different results, but that's what I've seen on the Omen that I've been testing it on, and other people out there have said that they've noticed that it's faster as well. I've actually chronoed it to prove that. So that's where we are with some of the changes in regard to the profile of the frame. Now, one more thing we need to look at. Now, I mentioned how the cable rod can at times drag on the edge of the frame. Another thing that we've done here to improve that is change the amount of space that's available within the frame. So we actually have about 5/1000ths more of an inch inside. And then, of course, because the screws are coming down so straight, in every case, you're going to get perfect alignment with the rod, and you're not going to have canting. Now, most of the Gen 1 models are really pretty perfect in terms of how these pins come down, and you're not going to be able to notice that there's a problem with canting. But even if it's 1 or say 5 units out of 1,000, that's too many. We need to try to completely eliminate that as a potential issue. So that's what Gen 2 does in that area. Maybe I'm over-analyzing things, but that is my nature. That's what drives the product design, and that's why Gen 2 exists. So people will say too, hey, you're just trying to sell product to people, you're just trying to push product on people. And my response to that is, well, yes, we are trying to sell product to people, and that is the goal of a sales organization. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what I do to make a living, is I sell product. But I won't do that without giving you something legitimate in return, is in terms of an improvement over previous models. It's all about that. You know, I can never sit back and say we're good. And then to me that becomes complacency. If you get to the point of complacency, then you're at the point of checking out. And you know, that's not where I am. I'm not going to quit and say I'm done with this. So every product, which by the way, there are other products in the works right now, some big ones, and fingers crossed, there's some really great things coming along here that'll explode, that will cause the TAP name to be used in many more circles, provided it goes the way I want. Now, last thing about the Gen 2 and Gen 1s, I would say that you do want to consider that not every bow out there, of course, can use these slides, but a lot of bows can. And I mean, we're talking thousands upon thousands of bows are on the market that can use one of these 2 slides, or both, whatever your choice. So if you have a bow that has a removable type of cable slide, and I've said this since the beginning, then this will replace it. Whether that's a Teflon slide that doesn't have rollers, whether you have a bow that has a removable slide with rollers, the only bows we can't put these on are bows with fixed cable guard systems. In other words, the rollers are held in a fixed position and they do not move back and forth. There's no way to change them out with an aftermarket product. They are 100% factory, applied, fastened on, in many cases not removable at all, item. So no, we cannot do that kind of system. Maybe at some point in time we'll do just rollers for a system like that, or maybe we can offer upgraded bearings for some of these bow brands that are out there. But I can think off the top of my head of at least 3, maybe 4 or 5 brands that can use a slide like this. Hoyt even has some of their bows, still brand new bows that are being put out, that have removable slides. You have Darton. In fact, a lot of Darton people are coming our way and saying, holy cow, this is a major upgrade to get this. We also offer cable guard systems for a lot of these Darton bows that are out there. We have string stops that are really good for the Darton bows. Then you have bows like Expedition. You have bows like Obsession. You have bows along the lines, many of the Bear bows that are out there have removable cable slides like this. You know, there's a lot. Athens bows, almost everything up until I'd say 22, 23, I guess it is, around the time where they went to a fixed position cable guard system. But there are just thousands upon thousands of bows floating around out there that can use these cable slides. So if you could take yours off, you can use this. The answer is yes. So go to taparchery.com. We have all the benefits listed there for these products. You can learn more about it there. I'll get this up to YouTube, and I hope people give us a chance. That's all I ask for, is you give us a chance, and you're going to be pleased with the results, because I think a lot of people are similar to me. We want to eke out the most performance we can from different products that we get. We want to see the best possible accuracy on target. That's what we're all about. That's what I'm all about. Take care, guys. Appreciate the support. Thanks.